to be murdered. He came up, didn't look at him, came to me. And Schultz stood in front of me again. I can't tell you for how long. It may have been a year to my mind, but may have been seconds. He looked at me, he looked at me, he looked at me, he looked at me straight into my eyes, and then without looking at Jacob, he pulled him out and he chased him into that circle where people were being condemned to death. The next day, and after he got his numbers, they marched them away, and we were chased back into the barracks. And the next day, we were taken on trains. Everybody was taken on trains and gone to the camp, to the second camp. But when Schultz took Jakob away, but he was looking at me, I felt that he was taking him as a sacrifice for me, because he was looking at me, he took him. And I just could not get over that. And for years and years and years, I grieved this person, and particularly on Tisha B'Av, when I used to go to the synagogue, where we sit on the earth and we lament, we read the book of Lamentation, lament the destruction of two temples. I would cry bitter tears for my friend Jacob, because I felt that he actually was taken as a sacrifice on my behalf. But I'd like to end this story, I'd like to end this story on a good note. And the good note is as follows. When we were brought to England after the war, we were brought from Czechoslovakia. Like 350 of us came with the Royal Air Force in Lancaster bombers, in the bellies of the bombers where the bombs used to be, and we were in a place called Windermere. But it's a long story. But subsequently we formed a society which was called the Primrose Club, where we used to meet. And subsequently to that, we decided to start a organization to help victims. But to help victims, not Jewish victims, not Holocaust victims, but victims in general, because we suffered and we wanted to help people that suffered. So we would collect money all year round. Most of us had, by that time, I'm talking about years later, had gone to many different countries, but we keep in touch. And we collect money, and once a year we find worthy causes. For example, when there was problems in Kosovo, we sent an ambulance to Kosovo. But we also publish a journal once a year, and I've written certain stories which appeared in that journal, other people have, and I read the journal when it comes to me once a year. It usually comes in the high holidays. So in 2002, I was persuaded by somebody who made a documentary on my return to Poland with my family to go to Poland. I got the journal before we left, and in the journal I read a story about a man who survived different camps, Majdanek, Skarżysko, Częstochowa, all these camps where I was familiar and I used to be. Went back to Poland after the war, became a professor at the University of Warsaw, was a mathematician, very highly regarded, and is still a mathematician, and he wrote his story because he said he kind of came across this journal, so he wanted you know, also to kind of share his story. And I thought, you know, this man was in the same camp as I was. I'm going to Warsaw, I'd like to meet him, to say hello. So I phoned him, I got his phone number, and I phoned and I told him I was in all these camps and I would like to find out, Jews in Poland, you've been living in Poland all these years, which is unusual, why don't you meet us when we get to Warsaw? So he came, and Stephen Smith, who was the director of the film, and the photographers, they were photographing us, talking about our experiences in Skarżysko and in other camps. And then suddenly he says to me, do you remember this election before we left Skarżysko? And I told him what happened to me and the whole story with cats, which I just told you now. And I said to him, well, how did you survive? He said, no, actually I was chosen to be murdered. I said, well, what happened? He said, while I was in that circle, I was standing next to two guards. I don't know whether it was a Jewish policeman in the guard or two Jewish policemen. And they were, of course, they were holding hands tightly so that we couldn't move. I decided to bite the hand of one of them, and he let go of his hand. I ran away, I hid, and I survived. And he went to a camp, not the one I went to, Plaszow. He went to some other camp. I don't remember exactly which camp he went. And we decided, and we talked, and then we were saying goodbye. He got up. And as he got up, and his name was Jakob Gutenbaum. I mean, he was like in his, I don't know, 2002. He was already like he was older than I am, so he was already an old man, and I was an old man. We didn't really recognize us from Skaržisko. I saw that he had a built-up shoe. Well, you know, some people are vain and they want to be taller or something like that. But then when he walked, he dragged his foot. And that was Jakob. And all these years I grieved him, but he was alive. So I'd like to end the story. Thank you very much.